my working life, really, I've been involved with church towers and steeples. And of course, this is one of the finest in the land, St Warburg's in Preston. It's 311 feet high. They reckon it's the tallest church steeple in England. You know, not the tallest cathedral one. Such a beautiful needle point, the big nut and bolt in top, holding top on, otherwise it'd blow away in the wind. And I think really I'm getting to the end of my days as a steeplejack, you know, I think it may be the last big steeple I'll ever mend. Man has been using stones to build places of worship for thousands of years. And the origins of the oldest are shrouded in mystery. The best known is Stonehenge, but not very far away at Avebury, I went to see one that was built on an even grander scale. This is one of the oldest megalithic monuments in Europe. It's even older than Stonehenge. It were developed, so they say, somewhere around about 2500 to 2200 BC. The whole site covers a vast area, you know, I mean, you can actually see some of the earliest examples of building and construction work in all of Great Britain. And this great trench covers 3/4 of a mile and 15 feet deep. I mean, it's one heck of an achievement, isn't it, for 4,500 years old, eh?
It's tremendous size and the depth of the ditch.
Yeah. You know, it'll have lost a bit of depth, really, won't it, when you think of all the years and the erosion and the washing of the stuff back down the hole, as you might say.
Yes, we know from early excavations we're only looking at the top third of the ditch here. The rest is infilled with material that's slumped in over the centuries.
Now then, how did they do it? That's the thing, so long ago.
Well, simple tools, Fred, but well-organised labour, I think. I mean, what have we got here? The most important tool that survives is the red deer antler pick. Of course, they could have had other tools, wood and basket and so on, that wouldn't survive to us. But this is the one that is so widely found on these early prehistoric sites. But it's important, Fred, not to think of it as a pickaxe. It hasn't got the weight, and not to think of it as a pickaxe the way we use a pickaxe. On prehistoric antlers, very often, the back of what's called the coronet is heavily battered on worn examples, which suggests they used something like a maul or a mallet and drove the point in and then used it as a levering tool. These ox shoulder blades are sometimes found on these sites, and they've always been cited as the equivalent of a shovel. It's actually a little questionable whether they would really shift enough material and whether you'd have enough leverage.
How many stones do you think there were in the whole circle altogether?
We think there were 98 stones, 98 or 99, in the outer circle, and of course there are the smaller features, the two inner circles inside. Each stone stands in a pit, which is not more than about 3 feet deep. They're quite shallow. They're really just balanced in position and held by smaller chalk stones that wedge them into place.
They look very similar material to Stonehenge.
They are, exactly. The same sarsen stone, it's called. Of course, the big difference is that these here aren't shaped. They're selected for shape, perhaps, but they're not worked and shaped in the way that Stonehenge.
Is there like any estimate at all of how many men were involved in this operation?
It's very difficult to estimate because we don't know the length of time that the completion of the digging of a monument like this took, Fred. I mean, we can't define it to say less than 100 years or something.
Yeah, there's no written record at all in any way, shape or form.
Not at all.
Nothing.
Not at all.
They just left us with this big circular trench. Mystery. Avebury has been an important place of worship for nearly 4.5 millennia. And as well as the pagan stone circle, there's also an early Christian church. St James's dates from the time the Anglo-Saxons were first converted to Christianity, but it was much altered and added to in the Middle Ages. It's quite rare to find one that's remained completely unaltered. To see one of the few that remain, I travelled all the way up to Escombe near Bishop Auckland in County Durham. This Saxon church at Escombe is one of the oldest churches in all of Great Britain, and it was built from the remains of an abandoned Roman fort at Winchester, somewhere, you know, in the locality. No one really knows who built it, how long ago it was built, and why it was built in this particular spot. Yeah. One of the people who helps to keep the church alive is Lillian Moody, and she knows every inch of it.
The actual corners of the building, if you have a look, it slopes slightly inwards.
Yeah, it does indeed.
You know, for maximum strength.
Yeah. Crow step gable end, isn't it?
Yes.
In architectural terms.
And
yeah.
There's a Roman altar stone up there. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
A rosette.
Yeah,
now, they
rosette,
don't know, but they think it's Mithras. Mithras was very popular with the Roman soldiers, so being the god of courage and bravery. Now, the doorway is beautiful.
The jambs are interesting, aren't they? The big stones going in and then two small ones. Like them bits of tile or something, isn't there, underneath that take the play up? Yeah.
Yes. And can you see the plaster?
Yeah.
Now, that's original Anglo-Saxon plaster.
Yeah, they were all over that.
It was all over. The churches were plastered inside and out. Now, if you have a look here, Fred, the chancel is not keyed in.
No, it isn't. It's just leaned on, isn't it?
Clagged on, as we say in Durham. Clagged on.
Just propped up against it.
Just propped up.
Well, Lillian, does anybody really know how old it is?
Not really. There's no records at all. They think about 675. 675. Now, it could be 20 years either way.
Either way.
The roof, Fred, if you notice, extremely high. Not the original.
Oh, no. It'd be a thatch one maybe at the beginning, a reed.
Yes, probably. The most important thing is this arch here.
That's Roman, isn't it?
The Romans knew how to build arches, but the Saxons has lost the art, didn't know. So they had to bring that rounded part intact. Now that, where it's a rectangular cut, the Romans used that to put this tool in called a Lewis to lift the stones. Now the Saxons didn't know why.
The Romans were more advanced then than the Saxons.
I mean, really and truly, they were marvellous engineers when you think of what they've done.
And it wasn't until the Middle Ages that the great engineering skills began to appear. I went to see Chester Cathedral, where most of the building work was done between the 11th and 15th centuries. It started its life as a Benedictine monastery, and it was dissolved by Henry VIII in 1540, but the following year he gave it back to the church as the cathedral for the newly created Diocese of Chester. So what we've got in here are some of the best preserved monastic buildings in England.
So this is the cloisters.
Yeah.
This is where the monks actually lived. This is their domestic quarters. And this is very much as the monks would have seen it.
This is, of course, a new roof, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, the roof is later. This is 1527.
Yeah.
And the earlier one was wood, and they replaced it with this stone ceiling. And up here, you can see very clearly where the later roof has just sort of been pushed through into the earlier work. And this ledge on there would have been a trough, water running through it, and the monks washed their hands there before the meal, before they went into the refectory.
And this groining, the big lumps, aren't they?
Yeah.
Normally they're quite small pieces, but they're almost like great flagstones, aren't they?
Slabs of stone.
Yeah,
of course, the bosses as well, the carved bosses. Big chunks of stone.
Yeah. When you go into the cathedral itself, it's very good for seeing the way in which a great cathedral like this changed and developed over the centuries.
This is the main part of the building. This is the north transept. And I think here shows really just what a mixture this building is.
Yeah, Norman arches and Gothic arches and bits and pieces.
Yeah, the one on the left is about 1092, part of the original Norman church. And then on the right, it's about 1300, part of the later rebuild of the building. But I mean, it looks like a real mixture, but they didn't seem to mind. Didn't seem to mind how it looked.
Yeah, I suppose the reason for like the thickness of the walls on the Norman bits is like the semicircular arch, which of course they needed thicker walls to take the thrust. As against like the Gothic job, it's all the weights downwards, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can do more with a Gothic arch. You can go higher, you can vault unequal spaces. It's more flexible.
And lots of people, of course, wonder how they built arches, you know, and it's pretty simple, really, when you think. You know, they have support from below. And they actually built a wooden curve, the same form as the inside of the arch, and started from each side and worked their way to centre, didn't they?
Yeah, which is, of course, one reason why woodworkers were so important in buildings like this. You know, they didn't just do the sort of decorative carving.
Oh, no.
They played a large part in the actual construction of the building.
I mean, when you think of a groin ceiling, you know, that must have been a work of art of woodwork before the
massive amount of wood.
And to take, they've got to get it right to take the weight as well, not only the shape.
I wonder how they felt when they were actually taking the wood away.
So I decided to put it to the test.
Like, this is a demonstration of building an arch. Like, arches really have been around for thousands of years, you know, and the earliest ones, they actually used earth for the centering. No doubt built the outside walls and piled a load of muck up and put timber on top of it and then put the masonry, you know, over the top of that and then dug the muck out afterwards, which I suppose early days in medieval, before medieval times, you know, that'd be the only way that they could work it out. The wooden bit in the middle, like this bit down here, it's known as the centering, you know, and of course when the thing's set we can withdraw these wedges down here and hopefully the wood will come slack and then the arch will stay in position. You know. I'm very confident that it will stay in position. I'm not worried about it at all. So, right. Well, that's what all good bricklayers do at brew time. I'm off now. We'll come back after lunch and take the middle out. The Middle Ages was the great age of cathedral building, and they've left us with some magnificent monuments to the skills of the medieval builders and the stonemasons. One of the grandest of them all is York Minster, and it was started in 1220 and it took 250 years to complete. One of the great engineering advances of the time was the introduction of the flying buttress. This was an half arch which transmitted the thrust of the roof from the upper part of the wall onto an outer support. Really, the invention of the flying buttress, it's, I mean, most people go to cathedrals and look at them and think maybe they're a bit ornamental. But really, they're very important, you know, when you go in these great cathedrals and you stand on the main aisle and you look down and it's all these great big windows, you know. Have you never wondered, like, why does it not all collapse when you see two great rows of pillars with arches on top and then great tall leaded windows up to ceiling nearly, and then of course the groin stone roof, you know, where's all the shove and thrust disappear to? In actual fact, when they invented like the side aisles with groin roofs, they built the big buttresses outside, which are really out in rain in a way, and put as much weight on them as they could, so they could build these little half arches in a way, as like a flying buttress, that holds together the solid bits in between the windows. Even though they look big and strong from outside, unbelievably fragile piece of building. When you look at the stonework on the outside of York Minster, you know, it's amazing, really, the amount of detail. You know, the mouldings, the niches, the beautiful statues, and the window openings and the tracery in the windows. The detail around this great west doorway is something else, you know. I mean, it's brilliant. People say, pity they can't do things like that now, but I'm afraid they're wrong, because most of that up there were made in a yard just round the back of the Minster.
But before they can start chiselling away at the stone, detailed drawings like this have to be done. From the drawings, they make a template which the stonemason uses to carve out the basic geometric shapes.
Can I have a go?
Certainly.
You know, hit me if I break it, won't you?
Thank you. Right.
You reckon Michelangelo, you know, he could shift more rock in a day than two normal men, you know.
Now, this is the geometric masonry, which is very disciplined and going to definitive lines in the stone, and this will go straight in the building. If there are any embellishments on the stone with actually flowers or leaves or foliage, then it goes into the carver's workshop.
Now then, good afternoon, Martin. Howdy. Yeah, I can see now the three stages of making them beautiful leaves that are on this side. Yeah, it must take a long time. How long does it take you to do, like, 3 leaves?
Well, it's probably about another week's
work
left in
there,
that, but it's
yeah,
probably a couple of weeks in all.
Yeah, when people walk by York Minster, they don't appreciate all that great effort that's gone into it, do they? Yeah, how do you go about making these hollowed out? Like, you know, a heck of a tricky operation with such delicacy, isn't it, really?
Well, once the form of the leaves shaped, you actually know where all the reference points are, and then you can begin to dig behind with smaller chisels. And sometimes to get behind there, you can use a drill as well.
Yeah, yeah.
When it's finished, it will go into the southwest door.
We just met a man downstairs who's making one a week, I think.
Yeah, they're doing all right. They're knocking them out as fast as we're putting them in.
Oh,
so.
yeah. I could see originally it were a lot longer, wasn't it? It went right through to the back, and you've chiselled it off where it's still good.
They were a lot bigger even than the one. The ones we're putting in back here. They were obviously we can't put that size stone in because we can't physically lift them, you know, to where we want them at the front and push them straight back.
Well, this is it, the great moment. We're now going to strike the arch. You know, it's had an hour or two for settle down. It is still a bit green, but somehow or other I don't think we'll have any bother. Success! The Romans and the Normans would, of course, done it out of stone, you know, but men like Brunel, you know, use lots of bricks. It looks quite precarious and weak in its present state, but if you imagine pressure coming on it from the outside all the way around the sides, the top, and 10 to and 10 past, it goes even stronger, you know, it never crush it. You know, you need immense strength and weight to really destroy an arch.
Well, that's how they got their arches to stay up. But how about a huge dome like the one on St Paul's Cathedral in London?
During the second half of the 17th century, a great magnificent new cathedral was constructed in the city of London to replace an earlier one that was partially destroyed by the Great Fire of London. St Paul's Cathedral, designed and built by Christopher Wren, is something else, you know. I mean, in its heyday, it must have dominated the skyline of London. It's a great pity now that, you know, you can't see it very well for all these modern buildings that are surrounding it. But of course, before he could start to build it, he had to get rid of the remains of the other one. And believe it or not, he tried explosives, but he upset the neighbours, so they had to resort to a battering ram to get rid of the remains. During the 35 years it took to construct it, Wren engaged the finest craftsmen and the best materials. He supervised all the bookkeeping and everything.
And every Saturday he came down to have a see how things were going. And later on, when they got quite high up, he was craned up in a basket to the top to survey the dome and all its goings on.
The sections that carried staircases.
Martin Fletcher is the clerk of works, and he is responsible for the upkeep of the wall structure.
You know, it was all about the embellishment of stonework. I mean, as you can see at the west end of the cathedral is how he wanted it, basically. So
yeah, just white and
just
stone
white
and
and
plain.
stone.
Yeah. And then along come the
along come
beautifiers. Yeah, and not that end. All this mosaic work was only done at the end of the 19th century, and it's very different from the plain, unadorned white that Wren had intended.
All of the 8 pillars, they carry a base weight, which includes the dome, the colonnade, down to the drum level, 63,000 tonnes on those 8 columns.
What's all this nice writing round here? It's in Latin, and I never went to a proper school. Yeah.
Well, you and me both. But the whole thing about it is, it actually says, if you want to see a monument to Christopher Wren, just look around you.
Yeah.
In layman's terms.
Yeah, that's a true fact, isn't it? St Paul's Cathedral really is a wonderful building. I mean, when you stand there in London and look at it, you imagine it's just a big dome, you know, but it isn't really. There are actually 3 domes. When you stood down in the bottom, you can see a beautiful dome, all nicely painted and everything when you look upwards. But on the top side of that, there's a big cone that holds up the lantern on the top. And then stuck to the outside of that, there's a load of timber roof trusses that hold yet one more dome, which of course has got the lead on top of it. These stone corbels support the framework on this great cone, which is perfectly straight. You can see, we're just looking at that, the greatest area of thrust of the whole lot is here on top of these pillars. But with all this pressure, how do you stop the whole thing pushing out on itself and collapsing? Wren came up with an ingenious solution. He put a great wrought iron chain all around the dome and sunk it into a band of stone that went all round the perimeter. And then, of course, leaded in as well by bucketfuls and ladles full of molten lead, which, when you think back to 17 odds, you know, the methods of melting lead wouldn't have been quite as good as what they are today. You can imagine a little lad with a pig's bladder and some, furiously pumping at some bit of a coke fire, a charcoal and crucible stuck on top of it full of lead, and then they would pour it in, and of course it had set, and the next lot wouldn't adhere to the other lot, and this has been really part of its downfall. At present they're doing some repair work to the chain and to the masonry around it, but even now you don't see much of the chain. All you can see of it are the bits that they've got exposed in the section that they're working on. This is it then? This is
the chain, mate, yeah. Basically what they did was come up to this height.
Yeah.
They cut a chase in all the way round, 150 metres round. Then the chain was forged, pockets were dropped in for the couplings on there, and above every column, around going all the way round, you have those 2 knuckles on there, which are cramps, and it's like a fork.
Yeah.
And that goes right the way back to the base of the cone, where you've got another 2 chains. So that's your restraint that holds that out. What we're doing here is what's happened over a period of years, where they used to pour the lead, because it hits this fairly cold, it laminates. So any moisture has got into the chain. And as you know, you get a little bit of rust pickup on there, swells up, blows the stone out of the front, resulting in these massive fractures that we get on here.
When you think how old St Paul's is, it's a credit to Christopher Wren. I mean, the architecture and the engineering involved in it are something else. It's interesting that over the centuries, a lot of our best architects, builders and craftsmen have reserved their finest work for places of worship. And they didn't just save it for churches that are as grand or as old as St Paul's. This is St Margaret's Church at Bodelwyddan, near Rhyl in North Wales. And I've always greatly admired it, you know. Number one, they call it the Marble Church because of all the different types of marble that have been used in the interior decoration of it. Altogether, there are 14 different varieties of marble in this church, and there's an amazing richness of craftsmanship throughout the whole place. Just look at the quality of the carvings and the stained glass. The bit that I really like is the steeple, you know, the spire. It's a work of art, you know. The guy who designed it, he's got the top 3/4 of the steeple resting on 8 stones, you know. Like, how did he know that, you know, they'd take the weight? Because they're so fine, you know. I mean, the whole steeple or the tower itself with its double pinnacles on the corners with the beautiful flying buttresses that hold them all together and all the lovely fine tracery. Ever since I passed by here years and years and years ago, I stopped one day and had a look at it, you know, beautiful steeple. You know, I always wanted to have a closer look and get inside like where we are now. You know. It's really interesting because you can see the 8 stones up above that takes the weight of the top 3/4 of the steeple. And if you look right up to the top, you can see the iron cross tree in the top that the great nut and bolt comes through to hold the top on the steeple. I think I'll go outside now and have a look round on the veranda. Yeah, you can actually see the lovely curve of the barrel shape of the steeple. You know, when you're half a mile up the road, it looks perfectly straight. It's actually barrel shaped, like a barrel of beer. These lovely pinnacles on the corners with the slender supports, you know, fretworked out, and the flying buttresses that join one to the other. Lovely bit of stonework, really. Next week we'll be looking at places of work, new and old.